Welcome to the Bulletproof For BJJ podcast. I'm Joey. JT's not here today because he's traveling overseas, and I'm joined by Jeremy Paul Skinner. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Good start to the day. Just smash some espresso and then head my way over here.
Have you grappled already this morning?
No, I haven't. So I'll be teaching a private lesson after this and then teaching class.
Okay, cool. What does your schedule look like? Full-time coaching, training. Can you break it down for me?
Yep. So day to day, it changes a bit. So I actually started working at a coffee roastery Tuesdays and Thursdays, starting a couple of months ago. So before I was like just full-time jiu-jitsu, but now I do a little bit of that too. It just happened to be that when I was the days that I would head out to train in Penrith, so like, you know, that's heading for those that don't know, that's an hour and a half away from here. Like it's a bit of a journey. That was the days that I'd take pretty light anyway. Like I wouldn't train during the day on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I would just go train in the evenings at Luke's classes. So it just happened to work out that there was this coffee roastery that a friend of mine mentioned. She's just said like, oh, you know, like you're interested in coffee. Do you want to like just do some work in the coffee industry? And it happened to work out pretty well that they were happy with me just working just during the day, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'm officially no longer a full-time grappler, and I am now, well, I guess I'm full-time grappling plus part-time working at a coffee roastery.
I would say the combination of those two crafts makes you the ultimate BJJ hipster.
Yeah, I mean, there seems like there's an interesting crossover between like coffee culture and jiu-jitsu. Like,
there is, huh?
There's that many different like jiu-jitsu themed coffee brands out there too.
Is there?
Yeah, there's tons. I've seen heaps over the years. I don't know how good any of it actually is. Like I don't know. Like I've never been big on like these sort of like themed coffees because like I won't name like different brands because just that's probably not the polite thing to do. But like you see this with like I'll just drop one like I think like Black Rifle Coffee, for example.
Rogan
like,
talks about them, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Like to my understanding, like, you know, they're selling their product more because of like a theme that they're trying to deliver on versus actually producing like high quality coffee. Like generally, you know, high quality coffee is going to come from people that are really focused on the actual coffee versus trying to appeal to a specific market, which is fine. Like it just, you know, people like, because then they do other things. I believe, for example, they do a lot of work with like supporting like, you know, veterans in the US and things like this. So there, it's not that it's for naught.
Yeah, it's a great cause.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for exceptional coffee, perhaps.
Yeah, I think like if you're into coffee, that's a different thing entirely, and you're looking for something slightly different.
I think as Australians, and I mean definitely here on the East Coast, like Melbourne, Sydney, we're
very spoiled for choice.
We are, right? And we take it real seriously.
Absolutely.
Not all of us, but a lot of us. Hey, I got to shout out JT. He used to drink. I remember him telling me about the amount of coffee he'd drink, and I'm like, bro, how do you afford that? Because he'd have like, I don't know, a bunch. I'll ask him, but it was like more than 5 a day at a period. And I'm like, how do you afford that? And he's like, I get it from 7-Eleven. I was like, bro, the fuck? Who drinks their coffee from 7-Eleven? He's like, it's $1.
Yeah, so this is the argument I make. Like I'm pretty picky with my coffee, but if I'm traveling and I just need coffee, I don't mind 7-Eleven coffee because it's $1, and if I drink 7-Eleven coffee, I go, did I get $1 worth out of this? Absolutely, I did. like compared to, say, for example, you go to McDonald's and like it's say $5 for a coffee, and it tastes more or less the same as the 7-Eleven coffee.
They charge like proper cafe prices.
Yeah, exactly. For, you know, coffee that tastes more or less, you know, it is same.
It's low level.
Yeah, like, and part of the reason for that is we were talking about before with like quality of coffee. When you're talking like mass production of coffee, there's probably a few things that go into that sort of bring the quality down. Like it's, you know, there's what they call like 90 plus coffee, which is a certain rating in coffee. So McDonald's is not buying 90 plus coffee to serve to their customers.
Who's the roaster that you're working for at the moment?
It's called Underground Coffee Roasters. So that's out in Penrith.
Cool. Yeah. Right on. And what's your role there?
So I actually just make coffee. So I just work as a barista. We've got the coffee bar there. Because of how the business is set up, the core business is the actual roasting and selling to cafes. So where the actual business is set up, it's a relatively low foot traffic area. It's in an industrial area because, you know, they need a lot of space so they can actually set up like the roasters and things like this and actually have the space to do that side of the business, which means I spend a lot of time just standing around just making coffee for myself, which is not bad. Like especially, you know, as I mentioned, I'm working there on my my sort of like not quite off days, but like, you know, sort of my lower energy days. So it's actually good that I'm not getting swamped all day long with customers.
So I'm guessing that is the idea that makes your day driving out to Penrith a bit more productive. You can work a bit, make a bit of money, not have to drive at certain times, and you can train jits.
Yeah, actually it works out really well because I basically end up driving against the traffic when I head out that way, as well as just it allowed me to essentially just get paid to do a hobby. Like I in my own time, like I'm into coffee and like making coffee at home. So it actually just gave me more of an opportunity to learn more about that. Like I actually get to learn about, say, the roasting side of things, you know, buying green beans, things like this, getting to play around with and try different coffees and like, yeah. So essentially what I did with jiu-jitsu, which was just go full time into my hobby, I'm doing the same thing with coffee too.
So to give a bit of context for the listeners, you are competing in the upcoming ADCC, which is next month.
Correct.
Next month? Yeah, we're at the end of August right now.
Less than 3 weeks. Yeah.
Less than 3 weeks, okay.
I think it'd be 17, 18 days from now.
Okay. And you're in the 66 kilogram division.
Correct.
Which I've fucking had a look at it, and I mean, it's unbelievably stacked. What are some of the names in there? I see Gary Tonin,
AJ Agazam, Kennedy Marcel, Ethan Krellinston, Keith Krikorian, Juan Alvarenga. You've got
Diogo Hayes.
Yeah, Diogo Hayes and Fabricio Andre, two fight sports competitors.
Fuck yeah, they looked great at their last. That who's number one?
Yeah, Sam McNally from Ireland, I believe. Trying to think who else.
Josh Cisnero.
Yeah, Josh. Yeah, he's doing fantastic. Like he's recently had a bunch of matches against different guys in that division, and I think he's beaten all of them so far. Like he beat Kennedy, beat Ethan recently. Actually, no, sorry. He didn't beat Ethan recently. That was Diego Pato, who's also in the division.
Okay.
So yeah, like
fucking stacked.
Star-studded lineup.
Now, obviously, we want to go into that, but tell me, relevant to the coffee thing, because we haven't finished on that yet, is when you're preparing for an event like that and you're training and you also teach jiu-jitsu, is it almost a necessity to have something outside of that can just give you a bit of mental space that's not on the mats?
Yeah, so this was something that I dealt with probably a few years ago when I was living in Melbourne still, is that I was probably too focused on just the jiu-jitsu. And I understand like some people listening might think like, oh, like, you know, how could you be too focused? But I think I needed like just even in a small way, just something that gave me a small break from jiu-jitsu. Not that as in like I needed to take full days off, but just something just during the day, like something minor that just gave me a little bit of a mental break from jiu-jitsu. Because it would be, you know, I'd go to training, I'd be teaching class, and then maybe I'd, you know, do some study, go back to training, go home, do some more study, and then go to bed. And that was my routine for quite a while. And yeah, so it's good to have just a small sort of incredibly low impact hobby to just give me a little bit of a mental break. And I feel just like mentally a lot better for it. Being able to make sure that I actually give myself those breaks during the day, it makes it just a little bit easier.
Is there would you say for anyone who's prepping at the level of the game you're at, that it's kind of essential to go through, like, is that sort of camp idea of like leading up to an event, is it really stressful on the mind and the body? And I'm guessing, does it have to be that way?
Well, so I don't think it has to be, but I guess we'll see come ADCC based on my performance. That said, though, this was for preparing for actual ADCC has been more of a camp than, say, preparing for trials was, just because of various injuries and things that you know, I had going on. I was probably only rolling twice a week for maybe 2 to 3 months leading up to ADCC Trials.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was only like, I was still getting a lot of the mental work in, and as well as a lot of drilling in, like throughout the week leading up to ADCC Trials. But I was only
What's the mental work look like?
So that's going to be looking at studying day to day, like problem solving, and yeah, basically doing everything that you would do leading up to the actual physical work. But then I basically just save the physical work for that twice a week. So, looking and analyzing different things that happen during your roles, looking at trying to just solve all of those issues that you're having. I feel like leading up to big competition, it's going to be less about introducing completely new areas into your game. I think that's something that you need to save for outside of camp. But I feel like preparation for specific competition is going to be making sure that you really get a handle on different issues that you have in specific positions. So, just if I do this, he does this. So I need to either determine why was he able to give me that response, and if I can't stop it, what do I do in response to whatever their counter may be.
So, as you see it, should your game be completely watertight coming into an event, or is that a bit of an ideal that perhaps is never achieved but you're always headed towards?
Yeah, I feel like that's more something that's a part of the journey. So if we wanted to start talking about, okay, what do I think it takes for someone to get to a high level in jiu-jitsu, I think you'd want to start out in the journey getting disproportionately good at a few select set of skills. And then I think over time, the idea is that you should be looking to then, once you get, say, 2 or 3 skills to, say, championship level, the idea is then to start bringing those other skill sets up to championship level rather than trying to evenly distribute your say, for example, your skill points across multiple skills and trying to come up well-rounded. I think it doesn't seem like that's been the approach to take. It seems like it makes more sense to actually put all of your efforts into a few set of skills, and then the idea is level up other skills in the background. So I think you'd want to have those key areas watertight, but I don't think it's really possible to get all of your jiu-jitsu watertight. It's basically you could either be good at a few select set of skills or just shit at all of them.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of the generalist versus specialist thing, isn't it?
Exactly. So I think the idea is that you would become a generalist over time, but that's really what that's more going to look like is you're actually just a specialist in a lot more areas.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And I think that's again, you're working towards an ideal there. Like if we look at, say for example, like the current landscape for jiu-jitsu, Gordon Ryan's probably a great example of that, where he's a generalist now, but really, to me, it looks like he became a specialist in one particular area and then became a specialist in another area, then a specialist in another area, until eventually he's become a generalist.
That's a great point. And each time, from where I sit, he's become a specialist in a new area, which almost then just supersedes the last one. It's like you haven't seen him have to play leg locks because he's been doing this upper body stuff, and you're like, well, that just doesn't even enter the game anymore. So who even knows how much of it he still has?
Yeah, like you see him pull it out like every now and then, but it's not the same as early on in his career. And I think this is sort of the approach to take. There's some interesting discussions as well around, say Jordan Burroughs, where you see this with Gordon Ryan, is everyone still talks about his leg locks when exactly this, he hasn't really he's on occasion pulled them out. And it's more because, the opportunity just fell into his lap. Like his opponent basically just gave it to him on a platter.
Yeah.
And then you see similar discussions about Jordan Burroughs where everyone still talks about, his blast double, when really his game's changed actually quite a fair bit since then. Like that's more something that was sort of pre-Olympic days, I believe. And then now he's a lot more of, he's more developed in other areas of his wrestling.
Interesting you say that, because I remember having a wrestling coach for a short period of time years ago, and he was always talking about Jordan Burroughs and his blast double. And a couple of times I've looked on YouTube and I've been like, Jordan Burroughs blast double highlights, and I actually can't find much. I know he's got it. I have seen it.
Yeah.
But it's not like there's, here's 47 top blast doubles. What I was seeing was just a bunch of other wrestling that he's doing that looks incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And it'd be the same right now if you went, like Gordon Ryan leg lock highlight. You might be able to find some stuff from maybe 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe even like 4 or 5 years ago at most. But recent matches, I think the only 2 leg lock finishes he has is Mateus Denise. He finished him with an inside heel hook maybe a year ago, maybe a little bit more. And then ADCC 2019, he outside heel hooked Pedro Mourinho. Outside of that, majority of his finishes have either been by rear strangle from the back or from Katagatami from mount. I think there's a few, S mount finishes there. I think Roberto Jimenez, he finished him with an armbar from S mount. He tapped Jacob Couch with just S mount. But the idea is that you're seeing more sort of fundamental positioning from Gordon, like rather than these more sort of like abstract way of finishing.
Before I ask the next question, hey, Paulie, could I ask you a flavour? Do you reckon you could have them just turn the beats down a bit? Yeah, just that bass is kicking a bit.
Am I up on the mic? Okay, just since we're taking a second.
Yeah, no, you're good. Your levels are good.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. You've done microphone work before, I take it, because your etiquette here is sensational. On that, can you tell me what your training program or what your schedule looks like?
Sure. Yeah. So we started talking about coffee, but you're asking about the actual training schedule. So outside
we go all over.
Outside of the Tuesdays and Thursdays when I'm working at the roastery, if we talk about like what my actual training is like, so I will teach during the day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at Grappling Education, and then I teach Wednesday evening at Sydney Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Maroubra. So especially now, I will generally structure those classes more so around the style of training that I want. So I'll generally like teach, say if I do an hour and a half session, we do 45 minutes of technique and drilling, and then we'll do about 15, 16 minutes of positional training, and then we'll do at least 30 minutes of rolling. So at the moment, I've just switched over to us doing 10-minute rounds because that's what I need, like in terms of getting comfortable with pacing for ADCC. Like a standard class, we would normally do 6-minute rounds because that was the time limit for matches at ADCC Trials, and especially when a lot of the other guys in the room as well are focused on things like ADCC Trials, it makes sense for all of us to be doing 6-minute rounds, not just me. But now I'm being a little bit more selfish with the way that I run the class, just in the sense that we're doing 10-minute rounds, which I know it doesn't necessarily appeal to some of the other people in there, whether they're focused on competition or not. Like 10-minute rounds isn't really applicable for most of those guys.
You got white belts and stuff coming to those sessions?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we we generally get about 40 people to the class.
Wow.
And we'll get a full spectrum of white belt through to black belt. So we will have like multiple black belts in the room, multiple white belts in the room. It's I'd actually say in terms of belt level distribution, we've probably got majority of the room is about purple belt.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe blue belt, purple belt. Like that's probably where the bulk of it actually is.
And is that the case at Maroubra as well, SJJA, or is that more so grappling education and?
More so grappling education. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So so that's my sessions that I actually run, and then Tuesday, Thursday evenings I'll go and train out at Sydney West Martial Arts under Luke Martins, and so that's where those are sessions where I'm just upskilling versus the sessions that I run I'm teaching as well as and focusing on what the other students are doing, as well as trying to include some of my own training.
Do you find it hard to go in those sessions where you're running the class, but then also getting in a bit of your own training? Do you find it hard to jump between those two roles?
I used to find it difficult. I find it a little bit easier now. Depending on the day, I will spend more time probably sitting and watching and focusing on other people rolling. But especially now, like leading up to ADCC, I still am trying to make sure I actually watch what these guys are doing. But it just might mean that I need to change up a little bit. Sort of the structure for the week. It might mean that, I choose to also go and train somewhere either Monday or Friday evening, so that way I can specifically focus on what the guys are doing during those sessions during the day. So I only roll once a day. Say for example, I want to pay attention to what the students are doing during the class. It might mean that, say, Monday or Friday, I'll organize to go train in the evenings instead. So that way I can actually watch what the guys are doing during the day. And then similar with like, say, Wednesday, I teach during the day at grappling education, and then I teach in the evening at SJJ. I'll pick to roll at one and focus on observing at the other.
Yeah, okay. Has rolling once a day always been a rule of yours?
I used to roll more, but I just my body just can't keep up with it. I just 11 years of jiu-jitsu, it's catching up with me.
How old are you now?
26.
Right on. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I'm interested to know, like, you seem to have a very kind of structured, and I would say sort of like a moderate approach to how you go about developing your jiu-jitsu. And I think that's coming more to the forefront now at the elite level. However, it is not the prevailing culture of jiu-jitsu, right? Like the Pohara culture is like you get after it and you show up multiple times a day and you try to kill everyone.
Yeah, so I've put more of a... So when I was rolling twice a day, I was doing that at a period of time where I could do that consistently. If I was going to roll twice a day now, I would... Like, say, for example, if I chose to roll twice a day for a week, I don't think I'd get through the week first and foremost, but it meant like that my training the following week would suffer, versus if I focus on rolling once a day right now, I can maintain that year round. And so I find, and I think there's probably, I'd have to go back and like check some things, but I mean, I think training in general, consistent frequency is probably more important than sporadic intensity.
Yep.
Like, I mean, yourself, like working like in fitness for so long, I imagine you'll probably see similar sorts of things in terms of people looking to make strength gains or cardio gains. Is that it is more about frequency than it is probably about like just intensity over short periods of time?
Absolutely. I remember speaking with Jess Fraser, and she said the exact same thing. She said, all of my injuries come from when I haven't been training regularly. Yeah. And I go back and I'm trying to match that same intensity and I break something. I think it's a little bit counter to our nature though, isn't it? Because you're on the mats, you're like, oh fuck, I was sick for the last 2 weeks, but I'm here tonight. I'm so excited to be back at training. I want to get after it. When really at that time, your goal should be to ramp back up, get to a point of consistency, and then you've almost earned the right then to fuck with those higher intensities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, this idea of, people trying to jump in and they're working with like sort of high intensity, but like sporadically, they're approaching their training with the assumption that the physical work is what's going to allow them to improve, rather than staying consistent on the mental work and like say, diligent study outside of the training room. Or like, or even in the training room, but, like focusing on like what's actually being taught. Like they're assuming that the rolling is what's going to allow them to improve the most, which is why they're probably trying to tackle that with intensity, versus if they focus probably a little bit more on the mental side of things, like, note-taking, studying, drilling. I think if they focused more on that, then, they would actually probably see greater returns in their training.
I feel like you're speaking to my soul right now. I'm that guy. I've just been the physical side of it forever. And I've known for a long time, like, man, I need to, if I actually want to be, better at this, it requires the mental side. Can you elaborate on what that looks like and say maybe, like, tell us what you do, but maybe how you would recommend that to someone who's not at your level, coming up, lower belt, how they could start to develop the mental side of the game?
Sure. So I'm going to go out first and sort of trash a little bit a common saying that's used in jiu-jitsu where people just say, oh, just show up. Just showing up is the bare fucking minimum that anyone can actually do. Like if you're like, people say, oh, like to get good, like just show up. It's like, no. Like anyone can just show up. The guys that aren't just showing up, they're not doing jiu-jitsu. So why do you care about what they're doing? If you're doing jiu-jitsu, it means you're already showing up. Like showing up is the fucking minimum. And I hate this expression because like that's just
kind of like saying, just wake up.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like anyone can do that. Like just by virtue of being in jiu-jitsu, you're showing up anyway. You can't just do something that just absolutely anyone can do and expect to get a better result. than these other guys. Like it's just doesn't work like that. I think you need to come into training each day with the intention of being mindful. I think for people that want to come into training and they want to start developing more mental training for jiu-jitsu, I would start off with just taking notes on what you covered in that, like what your coach covered in that class. I don't think that you need to take in-depth notes. Like I think people, they start like writing longhand and they're starting to write essays to describe the techniques. I don't think you have to go that far. Like I certainly don't write very, very detailed notes in terms of what I'm working on and what I'm drilling. I would take more detailed notes if there's a particular point that I want to emphasize about a particular technique that I'm working on. But really, this is where having a language developed or jargon developed for the techniques that you're using. So I know like a lot of people will give, say, John Danaher criticism for, his extreme use of Japanese terms and mixing it with English, which I think is fair criticism. But the point is that you need to have some sort of language that you're using to describe each technique that you're applying. So that way you can just take notes on these things. So what I would suggest is to take shorthand notes on what your coach has covered in that class. The idea then is that your coach teaches you a technique, you maybe did some drilling on it, and that might be, if you're just showing up, that's the only time you got to see that technique. But you go home, you get a pen and paper, and you start writing down what was covered in class. You're now mentally working through for a second time those exact same techniques. I think I was talking to a teammate about this the other day. There's even a study that shows that you will get committing something to long-term memory. You'll when you take notes, if you use pen and paper, it is easier to commit it to long-term memory than if you were trying to type things down on a phone. So I think like those are other little things that you can add in as well. I always felt that was the case just anecdotally from my own experience from school and things like this. So I've always preferred to go pen and paper. I know some people prefer typing on their notes, but I believe there's some research suggesting that, actually physically writing it down allows you to commit it to memory a little bit better.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that. We were discussing pens before the show. And yeah, I definitely think that pen to paper is key for whether it's jiu-jitsu techniques or it's journaling or gratitude, whatever. It's like, do it the old school way.
Yeah. And so then going beyond that, so that was a very long-winded way of me going about explaining, just take some notes on class. But then the idea is that if you wanted to go beyond that, especially if you're not sure where to take your actual training, is to start trying to find match footage of the positions that your coach would have been covering in class and try and look and see how those positions play out and look at like what other high level competitors are doing in the same situations, trying to, find like trying to, sort of see what the different options are, how people are reacting, how like they're sort of counter reacting in these different situations. Now, if you don't know how to find match footage on specific positions, then that's fine. You can also just go ahead and like pick a competitor you like and just watch a little bit of what he does. Watch, even if it's not what your coach is showing necessarily, watching match footage of a particular competitor and watching what he does in repeat scenarios. Like we were talking about Gordon Ryan before. Let's say every single time Gordon Ryan plays half guard, he doesn't do this, but let's say like every time Gordon Ryan plays half guard, he chooses to claim an underhook. You can look at, okay, how is he claiming the underhook each time? When he does take an underhook, what is he generally trying to look for first as his first sort of major technique? What are the common reactions he's getting off of that? And how is he reacting to those reactions? And then the idea is that you can start just looking at this and even taking notes on it, or even if you don't take notes, just watching it and trying to at least observe what he's doing and trying to take it on board.
Is this something that, and that was obviously a step beyond like just writing down what you went through in class. Have you always had this approach with your jiu-jitsu, or has this come about more recently?
I've done this since white belt.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've always did this, which is funny because I was very diligent when I was a white belt with like taking notes, trying to study jiu-jitsu, and I was a terrible student.
At school?
Yeah, I was a terrible student at school. I couldn't make myself do this if I wanted to.
And do you think that was just the case of you studying something that you love now versus something you've been told to do?
Yeah, so I understand that some people go, oh, I couldn't do that. Like I couldn't do that at school because I just wasn't interested in school. But really, I think that's a sign of a lack of discipline, and I think I was significantly less disciplined back then, like as most people were when they were younger. I feel like as I've grown up, like I'm a lot more disciplined now, and if I went back to school, like I wouldn't have any issues with making myself do that. So at the time, I think it was, I was just very passionate about jiu-jitsu, and so it was easier to get myself to do that because I wasn't having to make myself. I wanted to go and do it. I wanted to go and learn jiu-jitsu and like take on as much as I could. I didn't even do it because I thought, oh, this will make me better at jiu-jitsu. I just did it because I wanted to.
Yeah, right. Did you have a mentor or a coach that sort of pushed you in that direction with it?
No, actually, I did it because where I started jiu-jitsu, there was very little focus on like competitive jiu-jitsu. So I wanted to just, try and study like what the best guys were doing and try and steer my own training in that direction.
Wow. Where did you start?
So I originally started at Hunter Valley Martial Arts. So that was a karate dojo. Yep. Which is why the jiu-jitsu wasn't so focused on like the competitive side of things, which is fine because, everyone trains for different reasons. We were talking about this before, like, if you're running a gym, like target a niche. So you can imagine being a karate dojo, less focused on sport-specific jiu-jitsu and a little bit more focused on self-defense and more like, I guess what you might call holistic jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I was just very focused on competition jiu-jitsu. I saw it as a game.
And so you wanted that sport-specific aspect of it?
Absolutely.
How long did you train there for?
I trained there for, I believe, 2 years. I got my blue belt, and then around that time, I think I was starting to look at going to university. I think I'd taken... I think I didn't go directly to university from high school. I had a little bit of time off, and then I was looking at doing a course to go back in, like to go into university. And so just in terms of scheduling things like this, like it didn't quite line up with when they had the classes there. So I ended up changing to Best and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and I ended up training there until about mid-purple belt level. Okay.
And then I'm guessing Absolute came after that?
Yeah. So I've, as I mentioned, I've always been focused on competitive jiu-jitsu. And so I was looking at trying to compete as much as I could. Jiu-jitsu competition can be expensive, so as much as was financially viable.
Yep.
And then when I wanted to try and take my jiu-jitsu training in a more professional direction, or at least in a more serious direction, I had a chat with Luke about this, saying, hey, like this is what I'm thinking about doing, like going down to Melbourne and training with Lachlan and Craig and Liv and trying to take jiu-jitsu more seriously. And he was just, he was like very, very supportive of that and said, was absolutely go for it. Like if that's what you want to do, like that is the place to go and do it.
So you were training with Luke prior to moving to Absolute?
Yeah.
Okay. That's really cool. Yeah, because I'm not familiar with Luke. And I've never, I know a lot of the jiu-jitsu folk on this side of town.
Yep.
But I've never met him. But obviously his gym has become like a really iconic gym, right? There's a lot of we got, more than two ADCC reps going over there?
Yeah. So Lachlan's going over. I guess it depends on who you count as being. Oh, so you might be mixing up Luke Beston with Luke Martin, maybe.
I am.
Yeah. So Luke Martin in Sydney West Martial Arts. This was Luke Beston in Newcastle.
Gracie.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was like, yeah, dude, go and train with.
Yeah, but funnily enough, I actually did know Luke Martin back then too. Like I had maybe 5 matches with Luke across that time period when I was training out of Newcastle. So it's one of those things where I knew Luke through competition, but then coming around full circle, now I'm like training under Luke. So Luke Martin, So it's interesting, like how that all sort of comes together, because Luke Martin was doing a very similar thing to me at that time when I was training up in Newcastle, which was trying to study what these guys are doing at a high level and trying to replicate that. At this particular time, probably 2015, 2016 time, no one was doing leg locks. Like this is when Eddie Cummings and Gary Tonin were leg locking everyone, and no one else was trying to work out what they were doing. So I remember like Luke and I, like in the local competition scene, we had multiple matches against each other, and at those competitions, like we're leg locking everyone else, and then like having matches against each other. So it was, we even reminisce about that sometimes at training, where we look back at that and you go, damn, we sucked. Like, but everyone else sucked so much worse, like at leg lock. So like what a good time period that was, where you didn't even have to be good and you could just tap people.
Man, I remember when everyone used to tap to straight foot locks.
Yeah.
It's just like you chuck it on, put a bit of squeeze and game over.
Like this was a time period where you didn't even have to have very effective braking mechanics. You just grab someone's foot and they just tapped out of fear. Like I miss those days.
Yeah.
Now you have to actually like seriously injure people, and even then that might not be enough.
It's so true. Actually, I read the little bio on you on the ADCC website, and it said something at the end like, expect to see the people leaving the mat after fighting Jeremy to be walking with a limp or something like that.
Well, one can hope.
Well, that's the game now, isn't it? At the higher level, where it's like tell me how that works, where people don't tap and things break, and often the fight continues. But tell me how the fuck does that actually work? And do me a favor, just turn that mic a bit more centered to your head there. Yeah, good man.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like if we talk about what my focus on in jiu-jitsu is, it's purely the technique. So on one side of things, I understand that people look at, these serious injuries in jiu-jitsu and they go, oh, that's disgusting. Why would anyone do that to their body? But then on my side of things, I look at that and I go, great, I get to test out my technique, and I get to take it, test it, take it all the way through to its limits, like something that you don't do in training. And it's a little bit savage as that might sound. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm glad that there's these crazy people out there that give me an opportunity to do a deep test on my braking mechanics for a heel hook.
Damn. So for you, is it really like a kind of scientific sort of thing there, where it's like it's almost like an experiment?
Yeah. Less so now, because I feel like, because of how confident I am with my braking mechanics, I think more so it was more of a test to see, am I actually doing this correctly? And over the years, you would discover certain things related to when you actually caused a break, what that actually meant for, I guess, the actual joint lock itself. For example, so this is starting to get a little bit gross with it, but let's say we're talking outside heel hook. I put a disproportionate focus on trying to cause damage to the knee with an outside heel hook versus the ankle. There was a stage in my competition career where I discovered that if you're applying an outside heel hook and you allowed the ankle to break, generally what happened is that it actually released a tremendous amount of tension in the lock, and then it would allow the person to escape. So I know a lot of times, people will practice heel hook safer, and you'll think, oh yeah, if it targets the ankle, that's okay too, because that's just another thing that you're going to break. But I actually found that as a result of breaking the ankle, it would actually allow people to get out of the heel hook. So, and a lot of people are willing, even at relatively low competition, relatively low level in competition, people are willing to suffer ankle injuries, but not knee injuries.
When you say break, are you talking about there's a bit of tearing, a bit of a couple pops?
Yeah, so we say break, but really, we're talking, sprains.
Yeah.
Yeah, not so much breaking actual bone. That does happen sometimes, but more so sprains. But we just use the term break, even though in majority of cases, you're not actually trying to break your training partner. You're trying to cause some sort of serious sprain.
Okay, it's good. Yeah, because it is funny. I think about that. We always refer to it like, oh man, and the visual connotation for people is that oh wow, the foot must have been spinning around 360. No. But it's no, some tendons got fucked up, maybe torn.
Yeah, exactly.
Sprained, but the joint was still kind of largely intact.
It's the same way when we talk about, say an arm bar and we say, oh, we broke the guy's arm. It's well, the bones were fine. A break, to my understanding, a break refers to specifically actual bone.
Yeah.
Versus what we're doing is we're causing a sprain in the elbow. We're tearing at ligaments in the elbow there. So that's what you would class as a sprain. And I also find it funny as well when I've spoken to people about different injuries, and I go, oh, okay, so you Yeah, they go, oh no, it's just like I didn't tear, it's just a sprain, and it's like they're the same thing. like
Yeah.
People, I think people assume that a sprain means that there wasn't an injury there. There wasn't actually any tearing of ligaments.
Yeah. Sprain is like kind of seems light.
Yeah, but you could, like a complete rupture. I don't know if a complete rupture would be still classified as a sprain, but a sprain is very, very much so like a tearing of ligament.
A sprain is fucking horrible. Like to give context to people listening, like it's often like I've sprained my ankle really badly back in my soccer days and re-sprained it through jiu-jitsu many times. But a sprain in the ankle is worse than a break, because when you have a break, like say you say I snap tendons in my ankle, or perhaps I don't know, I break a bone in my lower leg as a result of that same impact. I get put into a cast and I immobilize it for a period of time and things heal. And then after 6 weeks, I can go back to, my rehab, whatever. But when you sprain something, you can still function with it. And usually it's a sprain, like you can still walk around on your shitty ankle.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is usually what happens is you just end up having this shitty ankle for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I mean, we see that in jits, right? People with the bad knee or the bad shoulder, and it's because the thing was never fixed properly. So sprains are real motherfuckers.
Yeah.
But in any case, back to the intention being you want to see how you can most efficiently apply the technique to target the most amount of damage.
Yeah, well, not even just specifically in that case. Like when I think about competition in general, to me, I look at it as a way of testing my skills. And so when you have I won't name a particular ethnicity, but certain people that are a little bit crazy and willing to let people break their legs. It seems to be one particular ethnicity allows us to do that. But it's just an extension of that idea that competition is a way for me to test what I'm working on in the training room at the highest possible level that I can, and with the greatest amount of resistance possible. And really for me, that is what competition is about. It's the same thing. With coming up to ADCC, I would like taking a gold medal is something that I am aiming to do, but that's never really been the overall goal of what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to get matches against the toughest and best opponents possible.
Can you talk on thinking about that almost under 3 weeks out from the big show? What is do you have a process for managing just the nerves that come about? Do you experience the nerves?
I don't get nervous.
You don't get nervous?
I feel good.
Amazing. What about when you're weighing, what about when it's the morning of the event? You feel any nerves?
The closest I get to nerves is probably when I'm thinking about matches and thinking about how they'll play out. I'll it might be, say, I'm in the hotel room and I'm, doing some study, and then I start visualizing how particular sequences are going to play out. Like I might be, say, for example, the night before studying a particular opponent and looking at match footage of them, and then looking at particular situations that they might, might come up. Like I might watch a particular match of their opponent, they're doing something from a certain position. Maybe it's one of their A-game techniques or something like this. And I'm looking at that, and then I sort of mentally go off in a tangent thinking about, okay, if I'm in that situation, what am I doing? If they get there, it means something goes wrong. What am I looking to do to salvage this? And starting to visualize how those situations are going to play out. I wouldn't say I get nervous then, but I've had a few times where I'm doing that, and I've had not a big adrenaline dump, but I can feel my heart race a little bit. But I think that's more to do with me really visualizing the situations and visualizing how that's actually going to feel when I'm competing, versus feeling actually nervous. It doesn't make me feel nervous doing that. It just, if anything, when I'm doing that, it just feels real, if anything. Yeah.
Has it always been that way through your competitive career, or did you experience more nerves in the earlier days?
So early on, first few years of competition, I would get adrenaline dumps so badly that I just never knew what actually happened in the match. It was proper like people talk about like tunnel vision. Like I felt like, you know, my vision actually darkened and like started to close over, and I could barely see when I competed, and I just had no idea what was going on, and just pure instinct. And I don't know what happened to break me of that, but just now it's the complete opposite. I feel very clear-headed when I compete. I find that I can think just fine. You know, if you watch any of my recent matches where Luke's cornering me, you know, he'll call things out to me, and I'll just give him a nod, like to let him know that I've taken on board what he said, and I'm looking to implement what he said. So I just feel, there was just a complete 180 at one stage in my jiu-jitsu journey, and yeah, I feel calm, cool, and collected when I compete now.
Man, that's the dream right there.
Yeah, I wish I had a better understanding of what happened there, but again, you know, psychology is.
Did you do some mushrooms or something?
No.
That Black Rifle coffee or some shit?
But it's just one of those things where, you know, psychology, even when they you know, do major studies on any particular topic, the results are inconclusive, let alone, you know, in sort of like a one-off instance, like, you know, trying to form an opinion on something psychological with anecdotal evidence, like that's borderline impossible then.
If you look back at your like upbringing and, you know, like your childhood, whatever, teenage years, do you see anything there that helped to shape your sort of desire to be competitive with jiu-jitsu? Just where I'm thinking with that is like, even how you mentioned, I saw jiu-jitsu and I wanted to compete in it. And from a white belt, I started taking, you know, notes. And I just think that that's a very exceptional approach. Was there anything in your earlier years that perhaps shaped you in that way?
So I would say that myself and the rest of my family are all very similar in that regard. If you look at what myself and my family members all do, we're all very specialized, very competitive people. So my dad, he was in the military. He was a major in the infantry, and he's actually an arms dealer now.
Really?
But like he does work with, you know, like the government, like in different aspects in terms of.
So he's not like Nicolas Cage, Lord of War.
The legal version of that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So while my mum, she is a doctor of nutrition and dietetics. My brother is a real estate agent. Currently, he's only just started doing that, but he's always been a salesman, and he's someone that could sell snow to Eskimos. And so all three of my family members are highly competitive, highly focused and motivated people.
Wow.
And they're all very obsessed people. So very similar to me, like whatever they choose to put their efforts towards, they go in 100%.
So that's always been a quality of yours.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is just, I think, something like, you know, so I'd attribute, like, because my brother is just like that, I guess I would attribute this to my two parents, just sort of the upbringing we had. Not that they ever, you know, really made us perform in that way, but just in my mind, both my parents are very admirable people. Like when I look at them, I'm like very proud of who my parents are, and I think just growing up, like you see that and you aspire to be like that, and like you have like I feel very lucky to have like such positive role models in my life, like with them in so many aspects. Like they're not people that I look at and I can really see, like everyone has flaws, but like they're not people with major character flaws. Like, you know, they're like always had a great relationship with each other. They have great relationship with other people. The way that their values align, I think have just had such a positive impact on me as I was growing up and still do to this day. And so I think that's where a lot of this comes from.
Can you talk to me on the jiu-jitsu lifestyle side of things? Talk to me about injury management at your level of the game.
Could be much better.
Okay.
Yep.
Elaborate.
So it's...
By the way, you need to go at 10, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
How are we going for time?
We're good. We're 1:45.
Okay, cool. So the issue I have is that I need to... This is where I need to do a better job of managing injuries. I'm much better with it now than I was in the past. because I, just overall, I think just as I've grown up, I've become a more disciplined person, and I can make myself do these things that I, like I do jiu-jitsu, and so to me, I'm like, okay, like cool, like I want to do more jiu-jitsu when I have the physical energy to do it. Like all my physical energy will go into jiu-jitsu. But now I do a better job, I think, of actually managing and rehabbing different types of injuries that I have, or working around certain types of injuries. Like ADCC Trials in the finals, my teammate Dave put me in an outside heel hook, and I took some a little bit of damage there. And so one of the things after trials that I had to do was do some rehab just to strengthen the muscles around my knee, so that way it was going to be a lot more stable and also just help promote healing there. Was there a particular avenue you wanted to go down with?
I'm thinking, so say something like that's going to happen in competition, but it's always been my feeling like injuries tend to come about most through training.
Yeah.
And it's usually something unpredictable, right? Yep. Like that's the nature of it. When I look at someone like you at that level of the game, and I've been watching like some of your recent training clips from Sydney West, awesome. Like fucking love watching the scraps, and you can see, and it's the same way that say I injured my knee when I was training with Adam. It was like two guys really experienced with this. We're just going really hard on each other this one particular night, and my knee, whatever, took the damage. When I look at you and I'm thinking you're prepping for a comp, you're obviously training at an intensity that's quite high, quite frequently. There must be, how do you manage, is there something that you consciously do to maybe mitigate injuries, or is it just like hey, they're going to happen and I try to train smart? And
Sure. So there's two ways to go about it. There's sort of two I'd say two major ways you can go about it. So there's, I guess, you could completely avoid injuries, which I think if you want to take your training to a certain level of intensity is not possible to do entirely, or you can manage injuries. So the approach we take is a combination of two. You identify what techniques or what movements are going to cause the worst types of injuries that are going to be impossible to work around, and then so you remove those sorts of techniques from the training room. So let's say Kani Basami,
the leg scissor,
exactly, yeah, or like Tani Otoshi, which is a way of throwing someone backwards, and this leads to like people sitting on the sides of their training partner's knees. This is something I've spoken with like Keller about as well. Like even in judo, he said like that sort of throw causes probably the greatest number of injuries. He said obviously when you're talking high level judoka, less the case, but I'm not a high level judoka. So it makes sense then for me to eliminate that technique from my training on a day-to-day basis. Flying techniques like just flying arm bars, jumping close guard, things like this. So anything that is going to cause serious catastrophic injury and is something that like it just means that we just have to remove this from training. Like it's the only way.
Doesn't that only work for predictable potential injury? So say like a technique like that.
For sure.
In my experience, it's usually some scramble or they go there, you go, fuck, sure. What happened? Oh man, thing got caught. Like it's usually an unpredictable moment.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So these are the movements that probably cause the greatest like catastrophic injury. So, they're going to lead to a whole shin snapping, blowing one or multiple ligaments completely in your knee. When you start eliminating those, then you're starting to be left with the sorts of injuries that aren't going to be as devastating, like ones where we're talking, at most weeks in recovery, not months. So then that's when you start looking at, okay, with what's left now, you're starting to do with injury management and actually like doing rehab and things like this, versus catastrophic injuries where we're talking surgery.
Right.
So when you get into a stage where like you're getting injured with things that are going to require surgery to recover from, there's just no working around that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, even on that, do you find what I've observed for a lot of folks in jiu-jitsu is that, you get those small niggling injuries that aren't catastrophic, but they go unaddressed or they get aggravated, and over time it can become something that does require, medical intervention. How do you manage it on that front? Like say with your knee, I'm guessing, is there some lingering thing there that you're kind of working around?
Yeah, and so I've over the years worked with both JT on specific things related to this. Actually, one of the things I need to speak to JT about that we actually spoke about quite a long time ago, but has mentally been on the back burner for me is probably like anything shoulder related, like shoulder mobility and things like this. But yeah, so I've even down in Melbourne, having worked with JT to help manage certain injuries, as well as a good friend of mine, Tim Travail.
Yep.
Who I think you should have Tim on the podcast sometime if it's possible.
He's a physio, right? And he trains at Absolute?
Correct. So Tim is one of like the highest functioning individuals that I know. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He might only train twice a week, but he'll rock up and then just beat the living daylights out of whoever he trains with.
Wow. Okay.
So he's a physiotherapist, as well as running his own online physiotherapy business. So he works in a practice as well as he does online work, as well as he's doing his PhD, as well as he's lecturing at the university. Like, as well as he has a baby on top of all this. Like he's got a lot going on, and he's high performing in all of these things.
Right on.
So he's a deeply impressive individual.
Yeah, that'd be a cool chat.
Yeah. So I definitely think you should have Tim on. He's doing a lot of work lately as well. If you follow him on social media, covering a lot of topics specific to jiu-jitsu, both just in like exercise in a broader sense, as well as like physiotherapy and injury management relating to jiu-jitsu specifically. Looking at like data sets related to jiu-jitsu and like trying to break down and show different studies on things related to jiu-jitsu. So, for example, jiu-jitsu has a disproportionate number of lateral collateral ligament injuries, so like LCL injuries, compared to other types of sports. Like, say, for example, if you look at rugby, soccer, things like this, the sorts of knee injuries that come up in those sports are going to be more MCL and ACL injuries, while jiu-jitsu, for whatever reason, just has a disproportionate number of LCL injuries compared to these other sports. And so he, will take a deep dive into that sort of topic and like talk about, okay, so this is the data, this might be why this is happening, but it's just like interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, it's cool. I have seen some of his stuff and it does look good. I usually stay pretty surface level on the stuff that goes deep science, because in a part it's like, fuck, this is the game we play.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I don't think there's anything we can do about, like, there's a lot that we can do about that in regards to remedying it. But I think it's like, it's interesting to know about. It's just, yeah.
What are you, with jiu-jitsu generally, what would be the biggest struggle or hurdle that you face?
I feel like I'm, so probably right now, and this probably seemed a little less evident, with ADCC, but, getting, matches against opponents, like sort of interesting opponents. So at the moment, living in Australia, we're a much smaller scene compared to, say, what's going on in the US, what's going on in Brazil, like places like this. So probably the hard part is just getting those matches at the level, like these high level matches that I want. You're either having to rely on competitors having to come from overseas, and this is not like, this is a very expensive thing to do, or coming from Australia and flying overseas to have these matches. And again, that's an expensive thing to do. So that's probably the biggest hurdle for me, is getting these matchups that I really want to have. And so just trying to sort of reconcile that and work out what the best approach is to take to get these matches. Now, luckily for me, like ADCC, they cover travel and things like this. So like, it's not a hurdle I have to worry about. But say, for example, after ADCC, I'm intending to stay in the US until about mid-December. So I'm hoping to try and get some matchups while I'm over there to sort of solve this issue.
And are you going to go, I'm guessing you're going to go train, pick a gym there and train for a while?
Yeah, so the intention is to train at B Team while I'm there.
I was thinking that'd be the one. You obviously have a relationship with Craig. You guys trained at Absolute together?
Yeah. Craig and I are good friends. So and he's been really helpful in me just trying to work out the best approach to take to actually stay in Austin, get around and things like this.
Would you see yourself moving to the States or to somewhere where you could be more immersed in?
Yeah, so visa-wise, that's a pretty big hurdle. I finished high school, but really probably the easiest way to live in the US is if you had, just some sort of bachelor's or equivalent work experience in a particular field. I think I've competed at a sufficiently high enough level in jiu-jitsu that there are certain visas available to me. So that's probably the biggest hurdle there to being able to get over to the US. I'd like to do that. I also have a lot keeping me here in Australia. So it's one of those things where there's a lot to weigh up there and a lot to consider.
In terms of you as a coach and what you impart on the people that you've obviously been through a lot of the stuff in this chat about taking notes, and we spoke about the specialization piece and trying to master a couple of things and that whole thing. What do you, when you're looking at these days, because jiu-jitsu has evolved a lot and we kind of acknowledge this off air, that it's come a long way in a short space of time. When you look at people who are newer to the game, whites and blue belts, students that are under you, what is probably the key pieces of advice, or even just one piece of advice that you find yourself giving to this population?
So this has probably come up more and more, not just for the beginners, but also for the higher belts as well that are looking to pursue jiu-jitsu professionally. It's, I think, easy to look at, say, for example, guys like Lachlan and Craig who have gotten to a very high level of the sport, and you want to go and do that and try and push yourself to get to that level. And people can aspire to do that, whether they're white belt or black belt. You can see what these guys are doing. But it takes a lot of work to get to that sort of level. And I think first and foremost, you need to enjoy it. So I think it's easy to say, like we see this a lot of the times. You would see this as a gym owner is, the guy that wants to come in and he's like, I want to be in the UFC. He's like, I want to be like a UFC champion. But it takes so much to get to that level. So it's easy to sort of say that's what you want to do without recognizing the level of work it takes to get to that point. When really at the end of the day, we're all doing this because we enjoy it. So I think first and foremost, regardless of what your aspirations are, you should enjoy it and do it because you have fun. The reason that I'm going to ADCC is not because I thought I want to go to ADCC one day. My goal in jiu-jitsu, what I find enjoyable is the technique and trying to get my technique as good as possible, get it to the highest level I possibly can. I find that aspect enjoyable, and that's what's allowed me to get to ADCC. But if I did not find that fun, or I didn't find pushing myself to get to that level fun, then I just wouldn't do it. I just happen to find that sort of thing enjoyable.
On that point, are there times, maybe certain training sessions, you're driving to the gym where you don't feel like there are the micro elements of the process where you're like, fuck, I'm not feeling it today? Yeah. But are you saying that from when you zoom out and you look at it, you're like, I enjoy what I do, and for the most part, this is an enjoyable experience? Sure.
So earlier on in jiu-jitsu, I think there was times where, especially when I was a lot younger, and especially when I'm talking like 17 or 18, where probably a little bit more emotionally volatile people, where I'd be about to go to training and think, I don't want to go to training, for whatever reason, whether it's some amount of anxiety or anything like this. And I realized that, most of the time when I don't want to go, if I've made myself go, I actually end up really enjoying myself. So I might as well make myself go initially because I know that I'm going to be better for it. There's definitely been times in my life where I've made myself go to training when I wasn't feeling like it, and I actually did regret it. Like I just went, no, I just didn't enjoy myself. But I know that, like, I know in majority of the cases that I'm going to enjoy it regardless. Even if I just simply go, oh, like I'm sore today, like you know, I trained hard yesterday, like I really don't want to go today. If I make myself go, I enjoy it pretty much every single time.
Mate, where can people follow you, and where can they follow like your ADCC journey? Like,
sure. So best place to follow me is on Instagram at Jeremy Paul Skinner. I used to be on Facebook, but I'm sort of off Facebook now. I just kept the messenger aspect. So Instagram's the best place to follow me. That's where I'm trying to keep like just posting updates about my training and things like this, and my plans for the US.
Sick. There will be a link to your Instagram account in the show notes. I'll put that there for sure. Do you know who you're up against first?
So I think they don't release the brackets until the day before. I think the current guess is Kennedy Micel, Cobrinha's son. Just he's the former silver medalist from the 66 kilogram division. The other two opponents I might get would either be Gary Tonin, who was a 77 kilo bronze medalist, or AJ Agazam, who was the silver medalist from the 2017 ADCC. Otherwise, there's no other medalist in the division, so it'll probably be Kennedy. But
no slouches there.
Yeah, like I honestly, like, any of those guys I want to match against.
Amazing. And tell me this, last question. You're a leg lock guy. Are you trying to bring something new to the event? Like, are you like, nah, people are going to see a new JPS? Or are you like, no, I'm playing my game?
I mean, if these guys are good enough to deal with my leg lock game, then I get to finally show off some of the other aspects of my jiu-jitsu that I've been working on for a few years. So it's really up to them.
I like that. The leg lock's like the gatekeeper. Mate, awesome. I'm so excited for you. The fact that you don't get nervous, even when I was asking you that question, I was getting nervous, thinking about if I was in your shoes. I think it's really exceptional. You know, as a fan, and you know, I've known you for a little bit. We've shared the mats once over at Alliance. I'm super pumped to see you, just for you to go, and then obviously if you can get some victories there, that's going to be amazing. So, best of luck. And, you know, for those listening, go follow Jeremy. See what he's doing. It's really cool. He's representing Australia. There's a few of us coming from Oz. Yeah, man, all the best.
Awesome. Thank you, Joey.
Pleasure. Guys, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Check the show notes. Follow Jeremy's piece. If you need help with your training, you know where we're at, bulletproof for BJJ.com. Find us on Instagram, YouTube, all of that. Thank you. We'll see you guys next week.